Watch This Week in Missouri Politics, Sunday mornings at 11 on ABC 30.
We're very pleased now to be joined by This Week Opinion Maker panel. Jack Cardetti, Democrat Party kingpin and now a partner at Tightline Strategies. Carl Bearden, the Executive Director of United for Missouri, the largest conservative grassroots organization in the state. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Good deal. Speaking of executive directors, Crystal Brinkley, the Executive Director of the Missouri Democratic Party, and Scott Pearson, the Republican strategist and the newest columnist for the SEMO Times. Scott, welcome to everyone.
Thank you.
We'll start with you, Scott. Interesting week in politics. These usually are slow weeks. This was a very busy week. Let's begin with what the representative just had to say. What was your thoughts on his caucus move and what he just said here on This Week?
Well, I think it was a good move for him. I think it's been good. Obviously he feels that he needs to make a change, and I think it's going to be good for his career. I think long term as he moves forward.
Crystal Brinkley, the head of the Democratic Party, the representative talked about how it was challenging for him to be pro-life, pro-gun, cutting taxes. What did you think of those comments?
I mean, I'm a Democrat from Sullivan County, Missouri, and it's just hard to be able to relate with that. We're focused obviously on recruiting candidates that represent their district, and we look forward to doing that in the representative's district.
Jack Cardetti, you've ran and won campaigns with Democrats that are pro-gun, pro-life. What do you think happened in this situation that is having now the second legislator leave the caucus?
Well, there's always a structural problem when you're in the minority party. For those that come down to Jeff City and are a little more concerned about what they can get out of it than what they can do for their district, there's always going to be things that the majority party can provide to them, whether it's a third floor office or something else. I mean, here, what I think the representative has effectively done, though, is put a shelf life on his political career. A Democrat will represent that seat in 2 years.
Carl, Representative Bearden, I should say, you were formerly in the House. Whether Democrats had third floor offices, was this a big deal when you served?
Well, actually, I think we started it in doing that, so we may have created that big deal. I think the representative did what he needed to do for himself as far as representing his district. I think it's a great move to stay an independent and not become part of the Republican Party because that gives him a lot more flexibility.
Scott Pearson, you also work in the Missouri House. What do they do with all these members? This is an unprecedented majority. Now they have another person that's an independent. Is it going to get too crowded for people to actually be able to accomplish things?
No, I think we can get a lot done. I mean, I think I hope economic development is going to be a big driver this session. I think that we have a lot of opportunities to help Missourians, and I hope that we take advantage of that and don't get in the don't end up getting in the weeds. Getting in the weeds with things that really aren't as productive.
Jack, you're not just in Missouri. You run campaigns throughout the nation. I heard the representative talk about the number of Democrats in the legislature slowly going down to maybe this is even a low water mark in Missouri history. Is this a Barack Obama thing, really? I mean, is it just you have an unpopular president and the party suffers?
Well, I think this has to do with a lot of things. I think first and foremost, it's term limits, but it also has been redistricting. It's just a scientific fact. Even if the state was 50-50 Republican-Democrat, Democrats are more tightly packed in their districts. So this has been something that's been coming for a while. But why it's important that this has happened in the legislative side, look at the statewide votes. Democrats still have the majority among the statewide office holders in Missouri. So this is clearly, even though some of my friends would love to call this a red state, it's far from it.
Crystal Brinkley, you held an event this week with all the statewide Democratic elected officials. There's far more than Republicans there.
Sure.
What do you think attributes to that, the difference in folks will vote for a statewide candidate like a Chris Koster, but they won't vote for a state Senate candidate?
Well, I mean, to echo what Jack just said, I mean, I think it has a lot to do with the way the lines are drawn in the state. And, we have some pretty dynamic statewide leaders, and we're fortunate for that.
Do you think there'll be people that will vote for a Chris Koster as a pro-gun-ish, certainly more moderate candidate? But how would you connect that to when you vote for Chris Koster, would you vote for the state representative candidate in that area? What makes that connection and turns around some of these numbers that the representative listed?
Well, I mean, it's a unity thing. I mean, Chris Koster, I think that, being a Democrat in the state of Missouri and having to separate, pro-gun, pro-life, again, it's a geography issue that we struggle with, but, we do hold a lot of the statewide, and, they get out in rural Missouri, believe that or not, and there are Democrats out there, and we're finding them.
Representative Bearden, I like to say that because we're talking about the House. You were budget chair. You obviously at the time had to work with a lot of different people to pass that budget. Do you feel at the time there was a different feeling in the Democratic Party? Is the progressive movement representative pushing people out?
Well, I think at that time that wasn't necessarily the case. We still had a lot of what I would term conservative Democrats. I think as the lines have changed and the districts have become more compact, I think you start seeing more of the moderate Democrats representing the caucus. And so we had a pretty broad deal. We had a fairly decent number. We had 87, I believe, in our first majority, 92 perhaps. So we didn't have quite the numbers that they have today.
It just seems like there's a different feel now. I mean, I don't recall some of these issues back then.
Right. No, and I think we made an effort to try to work with the Democrat caucus because we had just taken the majority for the first time in 50 years. We had caught the car. Now what do you do with it? And so we did try to reach out and work. Obviously, there were a lot of issues we disagreed with, but where we could, we tried to work. And some of that may be missing now, particularly as you get up to 117, 118. You kind of can get an attitude that says, yeah, do I really need you? And I think that's a mistake because everybody's there to represent their district.
Scott Pearson, is 2016 the year where you've elected all the Republicans you could possibly elect? And 2016 the year where that number starts to come down?
It's possible. I definitely think there's because we'll be focused on a lot of our statewide races. We'll spend a lot of money there instead of in the House races. I think HRCC does a great job, and they'll continue to do a good job. But I just think that there are seats that probably can go by the wayside and get caught up in the wave.
Crystal, is 118 House seats the top? Will that number start to come down?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
In 2016's the year that happened?
Absolutely, absolutely. We at the party have a strong candidate recruitment effort that's going on, and the real work started for us November 5th, and we're continuing to go out and do that.
Jack, is there anything they could have done in 2014? I mean, this wasn't a Missouri thing. This is all over the country. Democrats had a bad cycle. Republicans had one in 06. I mean, is this the high water mark? Does something return back to the norm here?
Yeah, and what I think is going to have more of a factor on that than anything is going to be the fact that it's a presidential year. We know in presidential years, much larger turnout across the nation, but especially in Missouri. And the dirty little secret in Missouri politics is the presidential years are the years the Democrats go on offense. The non-presidential years are the years that the Republicans go on offense. They have a smaller electorate at that time. It's more conservative by its very nature, and they certainly took advantage this year.
Next topic, Carl Bearden. Last week we talked about the Democratic field for governor narrowing. This week we talk about the Republican field expanding. It's no secret Tom Schweik's, if you paid any attention, going to be a candidate for governor. He made it official this week. What is the state of this? Can someone beat Chris Koster? Is a primary good? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, first off, I don't think Attorney General Koster goes into this saying, I can't be beat, because if he does, he can be beat. And so I think that he can be beat, and I think it does take the right candidate with the right message. I think with both Catherine Hanaway and Tom Schweik, you get an opportunity to see a little bit of difference, and you certainly get to see a contrast with Chris Koster.
Scott Pearson, what did you think? Tom came out of the gate slugging. Those that know Tom know he is a fighter.
Yeah.
He came out of the gate with a very pointed announcement speech. What was your impressions?
I think Tom's a winner. He's proven it, and I think that he's going to do a good job if he's elected. And I think it's going to be a long road to hoe. I really do believe that. I mean, you've got Catherine. She's got the money from one guy, but Tom's got it from multiple big donors, and so we'll see how that all shakes out. But we'll spend a lot of money in the primary, I have a feeling.
Cardetti, these races will be funded, right? I mean, at the end of the day, both sides should have enough money to run good campaigns. What does the primary do? Is there a silver lining in a gubernatorial primary for the Republicans?
No, not really. I think that it really speaks to the fact that Republicans are still searching for a candidate that they think can beat Chris Koster. I actually don't think we've seen the last of the Republican candidates in the governor's race. I think you'll see
got a prediction?
one or two other Republicans get in because Republicans are searching who is that candidate that can beat Chris Koster. But you're right, Scott. It's going to be a well-funded race, which means the quality of the candidates is what's really going to stick out. And clearly, whether it's Chris Koster against Hanaway, Chris Koster against Schweik, Chris Koster is a better candidate. He's a great fit for Missouri. He'll be a great governor.
Carl Bearden, leader of the largest conservative grassroots movement in the state. Who's the other candidate? Does Jack have a point?
Well, I don't think that you have seen the last one. I don't know if it's one or two more. I think you'll probably see a candidate that may not have.
No one's watching. Just let us in on a secret.
I understand. But I think you will.
between us.
I think you will see a candidate probably come in that may not have had an elected position. One that has had some accomplishments on his own that'll might shake it up a little bit.
Interesting. Crystal Brinkley, it seems like there is a case this time where you have a very strong top of the ticket statewide. Sure. The down ticket, what's that going to look like?
I'm confident that we're going to have a very strong down ticket. We, again, dynamic statewide leaders, and we'll continue to form our ballot the way it needs to be.
The bottom part of that ticket added a little bit this week when Jake Zimmerman, former representative, the tax assessor here in St. Louis County, filed to run for AG. You've already had State Senator Scott Sifton in the race. That's an interesting dynamic against a Republican field that has a clear front runner, but maybe not completely set in Kurt Schaefer. What's the dynamics? What does Scott Sifton need to do to win? What does Jake Zimmerman need to do to win? Is there another candidate we're not talking about?
I think that we should all anticipate, a potential, third candidate getting in the race. I think that, we should, and I think both Scott and Jake, they're great guys, and they're both phenomenal politicians, and they'll both run good races, I'm sure.
It seems like one of the recipes for success for Democrats statewide has been not having these primaries and having divided Republican fields and saving some resources.
Sure.
This time, maybe through some oddities of the process, the Republican fields seem to be winnowing, except for the governor's race, and the Democratic fields are not really set yet, the AG being a leading one. Is that going to hinder you? Is there something good to be found? Everybody says that you could find something good from a primary. Can you?
Well, obviously a primary is not ideal in this situation, but again, I think, we can, the ticket's not closed. Sure. We're filing's still open, and who knows what'll happen.
That's probably the case with most all these races. Speaking of the who knows what will happen, this week in the legislature there was a kind of an anomaly resurfaced from last session. It's been around every year. These off-site committee hearings. They're at very nice restaurants. They look terrible. Who knows if they're good or not? Carl Beard, when you were in the House, is this something that went on then? I know it's been on a long time. Do you remember it happening?
Yeah,
then?
I don't recall us doing any committee hearings, and this was an informational presentation. It was not a hearing. I think they mishandled, and out of the chute, folks like Jack was able to help them confuse the issue.
Why was this a hearing? Yeah, I don't understand. Why was this not just a dinner? I don't understand the difference.
Yeah, well, it was an informational presentation. It should have just been a dinner invited to. Each caucus. I presume the Democrats still do have an informational meeting. They have study groups within the caucus. And that's generally when those things were presented when we were in the majority. So you get the opportunity, because the hearing rooms really are not set up to make those presentations on big screens and those sorts of things. But I think that was mishandled. I think the venue of the country club was not something you can easily defend, although I think Jack's alter ego and identical twin, John Deal, try to do as best as possible. It would have been better at a hotel at the Capitol Plaza or...
Jack, just how bad is this?
I think it looks really, really bad. It's absolutely tone deaf. And I think, frankly, a few of them put Speaker Deal in a bad position here. The real question is going to be, at the start of every legislative session, everyone talks about ethics reform. At the very end of the legislative session, no one's talking about ethics reform because it never goes anywhere. Will this be the triggering event that has ethics reform propelled forward this year? I think that's going to be the big question.
Jack, when Representative Frederick from Rolla goes to fill up his gas in St. James, and someone comes up to him at the gas station and says, "Representative, I sure hope you do X." Does anyone say ethics reform? Honestly.
So they don't say, campaign finance limits and certain things that are very inside baseball. But things like having committee hearings in country clubs where the people you're supposed to be regulating are paying for your dinner, the person at the gas station understands that. And you can better believe this week, when these legislators are home, they're going to get an earful from a few of these legislators. And that's probably a good thing, because all Republicans and Democrats probably need to come together and really push forward a package where things like this aren't allowed, but to go even further than this, get some of the money out of politics, get some of the lobbyist gifts out. And hopefully this is an event that propels that forward.
Crystal Brinkley, is this an issue that can turn voters on? Is this something that could persuade a voter who's undecided, who they're going to vote for on a state level?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely think so. I think that the optics of what happened this week could not have been better, in my opinion, obviously. But, absolutely, this message will carry to these legislators' constituents. I can guarantee you that.
And that's something that should be your job to remind them of in November.
Absolutely.
But now this is obviously not a one-party situation.
Sure.
These dinners have went on for several years. The whole committee is there oftentimes. Usually Democrats are there too.
Not necessarily in this case. I mean, Minority Leader Hummel took a great stand and said that, unacceptable, shouldn't happen. Unfortunately, it took Speaker Deal a little bit longer than we had hoped to call these off. But no, I don't think that. I think we're on the right track here.
Yeah, Pearson, Speaker Deal did step in. The committee chairman of the second dinner didn't have it. The speaker did step in. He come out of this looking good?
Yeah, I think he shuts it down. He shut everything down, maybe not as fast as other people wanted him to do it. Obviously, when it comes to at the dinners, what I find interesting too is we have legislators because we'll have dinner, or breakfast, lunch, and dinner in some committees. So then we'll have legislators that have taken the pledge not to take lobbyist gifts, but then they'll roll in immediately after dinner is done, and they're the first ones in line for those. And so I would agree that there is some of those things that if we're going to do it, we need to just get rid of dinners, breakfast, lunch, and dinners. Just get rid of it.
Quick predictions. Will there be an ethics bill passed this year, Jack Cardetti?
I think for the first time in a long time they will pass a bill, but I think it'll be very much watered down because when you have legislators regulating them.
Crystal Brinkley, will there be an ethics bill passed?
I hope so. I think so. I'm positive about it.
Carl Bearden, will there be an ethics bill?
I think so.
Scott Pearson, ethics bill?
I do think
And a new column in the SEMO Times.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Couldn't be more excited.